Hello, Michael here with another Michael's Guitar Reviews, and today we have a 5-string bass guitar. A little bit of a departure from the norm. This one is made by, well, the label of this one is Harley Benton. Can you see? Harley Benton. These are relatively inexpensive guitars. There's a wide range of guitars and basses. This particular one's on loan to me, just for the review. And we'll just talk through some of the characteristics and features of it and see what it sounds like. Let's begin at the top of the headstock. Obviously we've got the 5 different tuners there. These are ubiquitous tuners. That's not the make, by the way, it's just that they're everywhere. They seem to be on bass guitars of all different price points, and I have to say I'm not a fan. They're not particularly good tuners. They don't feel particularly good in operation. Not really a quality fitting, but then it's an inexpensive guitar. What I am concerned about is the fact that they're fitted to so many higher price point guitars. So worth a look. Be careful if you're buying one, you might need to end up replacing them. Headstock shape's quite interesting, sort of a little bit of a flair to it there, I suppose. The nut is, as you would expect, a cheap, inexpensive, hard plastic polypropylene type nut. It is cut well. It's cut so that the strings sit just proud of the nut, which is what they should do. They shouldn't sit down inside the groove. And so that's been attended to carefully. The neck is of some sort of, it looks like it could be maple. The fingerboard could be rosewood. It looks rosewood. It doesn't look like laurel. It's a bit dark for laurel, really. Obviously it's a much wider fingerboard than you would expect from a 4-string bass guitar to accommodate this extra low B string. The frets are a little bit sharp, but then it's an inexpensive guitar and you might have to do a few little bits of tweaking to it just to make it how you'd like it. The neck profile is interesting. It's a flat profile, so it gets a little bit, feels a bit more flat as you get down towards the body. Actually quite comfortable, and I think you would need this shape in order to be able to handle the 5 strings properly. So yeah, flattened, comfortable, satinized finish, no gloss there, which a lot of people prefer. It is a nicer feel actually. The bolt-on neck, you can see there, 4-piece bolt-on neck to the body. The body, this one particularly, is finished in quite a nice creamy lacquer, and it seems to withstand knocks and bruises quite well. Everything looks nice on this guitar, but when we get into some of the finer detail, I think we'll realise why it's not expensive. Pickups look pretty chunky and like they're really business-like, don't they? They sound reasonably good in some of the ranges, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. What I want to focus on just at here is this bridge. It's it looks, again, it looks like it does the business, but when we start to look at some of the details, it's a little bit less impressive. The strings slot into the back, as you can see here, so they just pull in. The little brass or the little metal ring there will sit into this slot, and then you can pull it forward and it'll rest inside the groove and be trapped at the back there. Okay, so the string is introduced into the back slot like this. Push it in and it should lay down and then rest on top of the saddle. But setting intonation is going to be a little bit of a hit and miss game, really. You would have to have some string tension on there before you can make a note sound, and then it's a question of trying to move this little bridge saddle assembly backwards or forwards depending on which way you want to go with the intonation setting. This particular guitar, you can see the break angle, you may well be able to see the break angle here is not really very good, in terms of there isn't a very pronounced break angle, which means that the strings are really fairly straight across the top of the bridge saddle, and that's one reason why you're going to get buzzing, which in this case there is. This guitar is suffering from buzzing of the strings, so if I play a note here, for example, it's buzzing. Oh dear. That's a consequence of a number of things. First of all, the break angle here is relatively shallow. So in other words, rather than the string going over the bridge fairly steeply like this and then advancing forward, you've got a much shallower angle. So there's a tendency or possibility of the string to have some micro movements that you don't want, that can result in the buzzing that we've just heard. In addition to that is the relatively crude bridge assembly here. I'm going to have to increase the height of the saddles in order to increase the break angle. So when the string saddle is raised, that causes the string behind the saddle to have a steeper angle, which is what we want. However, raising the bridge saddle is going to take the height of the strings much higher than it is at present between the string and the fingerboard. So therefore we're going to have a look at whether or not the neck needs to be realigned. So a few complex bits and pieces with this particular guitar. I've mentioned before as well, if you are going to adjust the height of the string saddles, and if you're taking the height up, you need to release the tension on the string. If you don't, then all this tension is going to be pushing downwards and resisting the movement of the screws. That can place a lot of stress on these tiny little screw threads, which could eventually lead to them becoming damaged. So really what you need to do is release the tension of the strings a little bit, then raise the saddles, and then retune it and check the intonation again. If you're going to take the saddles down, so if they're already a little higher than you need, then the tension is going to actually help to push the saddle downwards, so you're going to produce less stress on each of these two screws. Just a little something to consider. But the adjustment for intonation is basic. In other words, the block, you can just move it backwards or forwards. There's no fine adjustment, there's no screw adjustment, it's literally just move it backwards or forwards. The problem there is that when you start to tune the guitar, if there's been any movement in between times, you're likely to affect the intonation. So it's cheap and cheerful, it's not great. So as far as intonation is concerned, this little block here, which normally would be adjustable with a little screw, simply fits into the slot and can be pushed backwards or forwards. So it's what you might call a rather imprecise system. Let me just see if I can move that forward with a screwdriver to demonstrate. Here we go. The little block is inside its slot and you just simply move it backwards or forwards, which I guess also suggests that it could move under tension when it's being strung. So it doesn't seem a particularly sophisticated setup. In fact, it's a very simple setup. Yeah, thank you. Not terribly impressive, I'm afraid. So here we are. The little block inside can just simply be moved backwards or forwards at will in order to set the intonation. Not a great idea. In the top we've got the standard 2 Allen type slots for little grub screws that will make the assembly go up or down to raise or lower the string height. But as far as intonation's concerned, it's really a bit of a guessing game, which is a shame. But there we are. Shape is nice. It's got a lovely sculpturing to it, and the chamfering around the edges reminds me of some of the 1960s. Some of you might remember or have seen some of the old Futurama guitars. They had a sort of a chamfer around the edge, and it is nice. It's a very nice shape. The body weighs about the same as most bass guitars, really. It's not exceptionally heavy. Balance wise, it's not too bad either. There's not a lot of movement of the neck downwards when it's on the lap. We've got a active and passive system here, but in the case of this particular guitar, the active system doesn't work. I've had a look at the wiring. It's quite complicated. I don't want to really start delving into that. Yes, I have changed the battery. Doesn't make any difference. So we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem with the active side. The passive side works perfectly well. Well, let me rephrase that. The passive side works. Getting any messages here? Let's talk about the controls. This one is for selecting, obviously it's a coil tap type setup. For active it's down, and it uses the usual rotary movement for increasing or decreasing volume. Pull it up and you've got the passive system, which is the one that works at the moment. The other three, this one appears to be a tone control. I say appears to be because the amount of variety in it is a little limited. We've got a more trebly sound, as you would expect, clockwise, and there's a notch. Doesn't seem to do much, but there's a notch, and then when you continue round anti-clockwise you get a more bassy sound. This setting here, this control here, also has a notch. They seem to be very fond of notches at Harley Benton. It seems to affect the sound wave very, very slightly, certainly at lower volumes. So it doesn't really offer a great deal of change. This one, notched, clockwise appears to select this pickup. Middle appears, in the notch of course, appears to select the two together. And then if you continue anti-clockwise, it goes for the pickup closest to the neck. Right, let's go back and talk a little bit about the 5 strings. If you ignore this one, these 4 strings are the same as you would expect on any other 4-string bass guitar, but you get a much lower sound with this low B string, very low. Lovely little design there in the fret markers. They are quite nice actually, and they've taken a bit of time to do something that looks a little bit arty. That sort of disappears into an ordinary oval down here. I'm not sure why that is, but there we are. So yeah, overall, an adjustable neck. This particular one, when I received it for review, had a problem with the neck. The neck had been adjusted so that there was a back bow this way. So there was a lot of buzzing. So I've had to release the pressure of the truss rod in order to bring the neck back into a relief more like this. So as you probably already know, we need to have a very slight forward bow so that when you press the string at the 17th fret, you should have some space around the 7th fret to bob up and down there. Purists will of course put a feeler gauge in and check to see whether that's as recommended by the manufacturer. But there we are. That's adjusted now and it's okay. We also, when I first received the guitar, the adjustment of the saddles for the strings was right down at the bottom. So consequently, when the string passed over the saddle, it was almost in a straight line, and that's more likely to lead potentially to some movement that will cause string buzz or rattle. So what have I done? I've taken the neck off, put a small very, very fine credit card size sliver into the neck pocket, reposition the neck, and that will bring it from being like that to being higher, which of course brings it closer to the strings. And in order to compensate for that, I've adjusted the individual string saddles higher so that that brings the strings away from the fingerboard, and it also creates more of a break angle. So what does it sound like? Again, we're limited to the fact that I cannot demonstrate the active side of the pickup, so we're just going to have to be happy with the passive side. So here we are, got the volume on, the guitar on full, the amplifier's obviously down a little further, and what we'll do, we'll start with all the controls fully clockwise, see what it sounds like, and then we'll look at what the other controls make the sound, and then we'll look at how the other controls affect the sound. Here we go, everything fully clockwise. Still got a little bit of a buzz there. Try as hard as I might, I can't get rid of it. But everywhere else is fine. I'm going to now bring the tone control, rotary tone control, fully anti-clockwise. Give us a more bassy sound. Everything else is turned fully clockwise, so we should be selecting just the bridge pickup now. Okay, now we're going to bring what it feels more like a sweep control, and I shall adjust that anti-clockwise and see what difference that makes. So it's fully clockwise at the moment. Not a great deal of difference there. Now, we have selected, so far we've selected the bridge pickup. I'm going to bring that all the way around, select the neck pickup now, and return the control for volume, for tone, return the tone control all the way fully clockwise. And now the tone control fully anti-clockwise for a more bassy sound at the neck pickup. Let's bring that sweep control round and see what difference it makes. I'll just play an open G string now and move the control and see if you can notice any difference. Very, very, very slight difference, not a lot at all. Let's put the selector for both pickups now into the centre, both pickups together with the tone control fully clockwise for a more trebly sound. And now a more bassy sound, fully anti-clockwise. Try that sweep control again. difference, is there really? So what's the verdict? Well, first of all, the fifth string is actually quite a nice thing to have as an addition. Whether you use it all that much is very much dependent on the style that you prefer to play in. It does make a difference to the neck width, so physically the characteristics are much different to a 4-string. This guitar starts out as being an inexpensive guitar, so really a lot depends on your expectations and what you want to use it for. As a basic take around for occasional gigs that you're not too worried about, or as a backup, it's probably fine. There are some reasonably good sounds available, even if you're just using it in the passive mode. I can't demonstrate the active side of the sound spectrum because of the problems in this case with the control, but it's got some reasonably good sounds. It's not unpleasant to play at all. It feels okay to handle, and yeah, I think overall a reasonable guitar for not a lot of money, but don't expect it to be a long-term prospect. It's probably okay as a backup guitar, or for someone who's interested in just physically starting to learn to play some bass. I'm not massively convinced by the controls, the sound variations. That could, in fairness, be due to the fact that the active system isn't working, and it may well be that if that were the case, it would be a lot better. So overall, okay, fair little bass guitar, inexpensive, good starting machine, I suppose. But as ever, please subscribe. I ask this every time, and it's so lovely when people do subscribe. I really appreciate it. The more people who subscribe, the more visible the channel becomes, and therefore more people get to share this love of guitars. I always value your constructive comments and feedback, and in the meantime, happy playing. Bye for now.